What's in the box?
Ahoy, comic art nerds, it's Stingray. Welcome you back to the Cove on this fine autumn day. And what a special day it is, because today I have a package that came to me all the way from jolly old England. And guess what it contains? Published Stingray art. You guys aren't ready for this. Nobody was ready for this because most people assume that this obscure fishy guy doesn't even show up in the comics anymore. But this is modern published Stingray art that came out from a comic that was released, I think it was last September. So it's been just over a year ago. And there's kind of an interesting story that goes along with this art because it kind of took some time to get here to me. And we'll talk about that while I try to get into this package. So basically, the art that you're going to see today is from the first issue of an 8-issue Namor miniseries written by Jason Aaron. And there was art in the series by two different artists because the series kind of went across two different timelines. There was the modern time frame and then the past with where we see Namor's childhood, actually, which is kind of cool because I don't think that's something that has been delved into in the comics a whole lot before. Anyway, last year when I read the first issue of this book, I mean, it's a Namor book and Stingray's always been kind of tied to Namor, so I thought there was a chance that he might show up, but you know, you can never be too sure, right? You know, what writers remember him and what writers don't is always a question. Imagine my surprise when Stingray showed up in several pages of this book. And I decided that, oh crap, I need to find out if that's traditional art versus digital. Turns out that it was. And I need to find out if that art is available. And it turns out that it was. And I reached out. I had to do some digging because the art was by an artist named Paul Davidson, who I was not terribly familiar with. A British artist. I found his social media, but he hadn't posted in several months at that point, and he had a website. There we go. He had a website that hadn't been updated in several years, and I reached out to him and I hit him up and asked him about purchasing these pages from him. It took a little time for him to get back to me. There's a little bit of back and forth. It literally spanned months because he was in the process of moving from one home to another. He did say that he would set aside some pages for me that I asked about, and he would be happy to sell them to me. And then there was a pause while he moved and other stuff happened. Then we spoke again. We talked a little bit about a price, yada, yada. And then I got laid off from work back in April. And I kind of ghosted him at the time. And that was kind of the end of the conversation. I forgot to get back to him after I got another job, and I didn't hear anything from him. So it just kind of dropped off, and I kind of didn't think about it until we fast forward to about two and a half weeks ago, maybe not even that long. I don't know. Time is a flat circle. About two and a half weeks ago, three friends of the Cove reached out to me. Shout out to Hart, JC, and everybody's favorite Sri Lankan, Aranga. All three of those fine fellows reached out to me to say, hey, did you know that there's some published Stingray art for sale on this British website? And I didn't know. I was shocked to find out because previously Paul Davidson had not been selling his art anywhere online that I could tell. I was going to buy direct from him. So I was a little bit surprised. So not only were these pages up there, but entire issues, all of the art that he had done for the Namor miniseries. So I went ahead and bought the pages that I had originally agreed to buy from Paul. So Paul, if by any chance you see this, I apologize for ghosting you earlier in the year. Like I said, I lost a job and I kind of panicked and decided that maybe spending some money on comic art at that time was not a great priority to have. But now that we're back in business, I found the website that you're selling your art on, and I was able to bring these guys home. So sorry about that. Hopefully there's no hard feelings. Sometimes things just don't work out, but this worked out in the end. And I have not one, not three, but 5 pages to show you guys. And it's pretty awesome because it's a 5-page sequence. And so basically the story goes in issue 1 of the series of this Namor book. Namor's in prison voluntarily because he feels like he needs to atone for some of his past actions. And at one point, a bunch of Atlantean thugs, including a giant crabman monster, show up to kick his ass. It's like a prison shanking, you know, they're going to beat him up while he's inside and make it look like he just pissed off somebody in the yard. But they're messing around with Namor and he kicked all their asses. But he ended up getting knocked unconscious during the fight. So in this sequence, he wakes up in the infirmary of the prison and Stingray is standing there at the foot of the bed going, yo dog, we got to talk. And basically, through the course of these 5 pages, Stingray starts to catch Namor up on the current events in Atlantis. Get it? Current water. Ha ha ha. And basically, there are 7 factions that have put forth a champion, a king, if you will. There are 7 kings for the 7 seas. They're all trying to claim to be the true king of Atlantis, and it's causing chaos throughout the oceans. And so Stingray is imploring Namor to get off his self-pitying ass, get back in the water, and go let people know who the real king is. And I thought that that was kind of fun that Stingray, who is usually the guy who is telling Namor to stop being a dick, was telling him, you need to go kick some ass and show people who you really are. And so we have this wonderful 5-page sequence. I believe, yeah, this is pages 20 to 24 of issue 1 of Namor, Prince of Atlantis or something like that, I think was the subtitle of this book. And it was written by Jason Aaron. And if you've ever read a comic by Jason Aaron, you know that he likes sword and sandal, sword and sorcery, Conan the Barbarian type stuff. He recently did an Image comic called Bug Wars, which was essentially kind of a sword and sorcery Conan-esque story set in somebody's backyard. It was kind of like Conan meets Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Wild book, great art by Mahmoud Asrar. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. The first volume is out in trade. Good read. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, Jason Aaron did this Namor book, and it's very, you know, adventure story, like high fantasy. There's a lot of magic. There's some politics, like Game of Thrones type stuff. You get to meet some of the more interesting and bizarre denizens of the deeps, if you will. Atuma shows up. Can't help but enjoy a good Atuma appearance. I think Orca shows up in this story. All of the fun Atlantean characters. And of course, Stingray shows up. He's in issue 1. There's another page from issue 1 that had Stingray on it that I didn't grab at this time. I'm hoping nobody snags it and I can go back and get it later. We'll see. There's also, he appeared in at least 1 page of issue number 3. And then he was in almost like half of the book in issue number 8. But the Stingray appearances in issue number 8 were by the other artist who had been doing the past time frame, Alex Lenz. And I reached out to Alex to see if he had any of that art available. And it turned out it was all digital. And I had a sad that day. But, you know, it is what it is. But now, let's get into the art. So, page 1. This is Namor waking up in his infirmary bed. Stingray's going, we got to talk. Fun talky page there. Now, this page is really fun because this top panel here, you can see all of the other Atlanteans that are in bed from where they got their asses kicked by Namor. They're all bruised and bandaged, far worse than Namor. You can see the silhouette of the crab claw here from the giant crabman guy. I thought that that was a really fun one. I love the close-ups of Namor here. You really see the acting here. The close-up of Stingray with no acting because of the mask. And it's really interesting to me because some artists, when they do Stingray art or characters with a mask like this, they will choose to put lines in the mask, some shadows to kind of show you where the nose is, where the cheeks, the jawline are. And that wasn't the case here. We just get a cool close-up of the mask. It is what it is. This next page, we get a couple of panels at the top here of some bad stuff, man. People getting attacked by sharks, eels, Atlanteans having sea creatures coming out of their mouths. This is kind of interstitial panels showing us the bad shit that is going down at Atlantis because Namor's not there to protect the people. And, you know, more close-ups of Stingray. And there he is kind of looking over the shoulder like, come on, man, come on. So a lot of really, like, interesting emotional stuff going on here. So here's the 4th page in the sequence, and this is where it gets really cool. So again, we see another Atlantean in that top panel who got his ass handed to him. Stingray's looking real serious, and you see him put his hand to his face here. Another panel of the bad stuff that's happening. And then in this last panel down here, Stingray is taking his mask off. Now, originally, way back in 1969 when Stingray first appeared, he was this kind of very dorky looking, like straight edge looking blonde guy, blonde white dude, kind of shortish hair. You know, he looked similar to how like Steve Rogers, Clint Barton, Hank Pym, all of those guys, you know, they all look kind of similar back then. They were all very tall, statuesque white guys with blonde hair, and they all look kind of similar. And so, you know, some of the artists that have drawn Avengers over the years had to work a little bit harder to take some of those characters and differentiate them a little bit when they're out of the costumes and out of the masks, right? Stingray kind of was similar, though I think in the earliest appearances, he looked a little bit more, a little bit less statuesque and a little bit more like, you know, a nerdy scientist type, because he was an oceanographer and his whole thing was creating a submersible vehicle so that he could travel down to Atlantis and explore it. And that's when he first met Namor, who said, "What are you doing in my neighborhood, fool?" And that's where their relationship started. But so in the 4th page of this sequence, we see Stingray in the shadows taking his mask off. It's kind of spooky. And then we get this last page of the sequence where we get Stingray's face in all its glory with the shaggy hair and beard. I was not expecting that. And it's giving me Kurt Russell and The Thing vibes. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but that's kind of what I thought when I first saw this. Not what I was expecting. And again, we get some really great acting from both of the characters here. I mean, I really like these pages because it's essentially a talking scene, right? It's a hospital bed scene, right? Only it's not a deathbed sequence. It's this guy woke up in the hospital and now he's being told, like, while you were busy doing dumb shit and feeling sorry for yourself, your home is getting wrecked. So you need to do something about it. And you see here the look on Namor's face, and you see the look on Stingray's face. And I love this middle panel on the bottom here where he's holding the mask. It just kind of gives it that little bit of drama. He's saying, you know, like, look, here's me. I'm being for real with you. No masks, no secret identities, no, you know, superheroes. Your home is in a big trouble right now. And if you don't go out there and do something about it, I don't know if you're going to have a home to go back to. So it's a real serious stuff going down in Atlantis, and Stingray is the voice of reason here. I got this really great 5-page sequence from this Namor book with, I mean, just this first page, man, this first panel, like basically a full body, great, excellent panel of Stingray. Love it. So very, very, very solid artwork from an actually really fun Namor book. I mean, it's kind of weird to say because Namor is one of those characters that are kind of, you either love him or you hate him, right? Because he's been an X-Man, sort of, you know, he's Marvel's first mutant. So he's been a part of the X-Men before. He's been an Avenger. He was in the Invaders, but he's also been like a bad guy. You know, he teamed up with Dr. Doom way back when. He's one of those characters that sometimes he's a good guy, but he's kind of annoying because he's kind of a dick, and sometimes he's a bad guy and even more of a dick. So very, very love or hate kind of character. But this book made him, I think, not likable, but he was more approachable, more, you kind of understood his motivation and what he was doing. And you could kind of cheer for him a little bit. You know, you could accept that he's not maybe the best person out there, but he was doing the right thing. And so it gave you a reason to cheer him on a little bit. And then at the end of the story, in issue 8, spoiler alert, he manages to save Atlantis, right? Not really much of a surprise there. It is a comic, right? The hero kind of tends to win in these, especially in superhero comics. But I will say, Stingray shows back up in issue 8 of this series, and he is made the official UN ambassador for Atlantis. I think it's the UN ambassador for Atlantis. So he represents Atlantis at the UN now. And I thought that was a really cool little detail. So shout out to Paul Davidson once again for drawing these epic Stingray pages, and shout out to Jason Aaron for using Stingray and making him the UN ambassador for Atlantis. I thought that was a cool little detail and an awesome little upgrade for my my favorite Marvel character. I am going to go back. I'm going to be watching those other Stingray pages from this issue, and hopefully I can pick those up in the not too distant future. Those are the pages that I got today. Some modern published Stingray art. I love it. And that's all for me today. And remember, every day is a great day for Stingray.